DCA debate impacts millions of our constituents and hundreds of thousands of businesses throughout our country, and yet it is uniquely a DC conversation. Only here in DC 60 years ago were legislators given the power to decide if and how often Americans would fly to their nation's capital. This DC amendment is focused on granting more Americans the opportunity to decide for themselves if and how often. This Congress has an opportunity to give our fellow Americans more access through less expensive, more convenient, and more value-added travel to the people's house. In the late 1960s, DC legislators imposed a 1,200-mile perimeter to ensure the success of Dulles Airport. In doing so, though, they failed to envision factors like population growth and the future access demands of close to 30% of Fortune 500 companies that are located outside the perimeters. Every airport outside of DC has evolved and modernized the old-fashioned way through the invisible hand and pocketbook of we the people. It's called the free market. Today's debate regarding the modernization of the DC Act is a discussion about the invisible hands of millions of inquisitive Americans willing to pay for the experience of visiting people's house. They come to our nation's capital to advocate for their businesses, their industries, and to educate their children on how our republic works. If we are to address the industry's high costs and the limited option travel to DC, if we do not address this, too many of our youth will never know the value and the workings of the people's house. They might never experience the history and awe of walking the halls of the Capitol building, of visiting our offices, seeing you and your fellow colleagues voting from the gallery or taking the vote themselves on the floor. They may never see the spot at Statuary Hall where Abraham Lincoln sat as a young congressman, or stand in front of the Washington and Lincoln Monument, or the war memorials commemorating our brave soldiers. Our failure to grant access to our upcoming generation may limit the potential of our future's next Benjamin Franklin or Booker T. Washingtons. Myth: additional flights to DCA will hurt the growth of Dulles. The truth: Northern Virginia's population has tripled since the 1970s. Dulles is now one of the top airports in the country. It should never be afraid of the free market, which gives customers the best options. Myth: loss of flights. The truth: the amendment specifically states that existing direct flights are protected, clearly stated in the amendment. Myth: it will add additional noise. The truth: due to innovation technology, noise levels at DCA have remained flat for the past 10 years. A report from the Committee of Aviation Environmental Protection estimates that in 2030, new certified aircraft will be quieter than the aircraft certified in 2020. Myth: not enough room for expansion. The truth: the DCA is presently underutilized. It now has a $1 billion terminal expansion called the Project Journey, a 14-gate concourse, 50,000 feet at each checkpoint, 40% increase in capacity of security lines, and a recent op-ed by a former FAA official that we definitely have the room to grow. The bill enacts 14 slots instead of the amendment's original 28 between 7 carriers now servicing DCA. The FAA will determine if DCA can accommodate the full 28 flights without congestion. If found additional flights will cause too much congestion, they will not be added. In conclusion, the 60-year-old perimeter law is now archaic. It has proven to be both a blessing and a curse. Blessing to Dulles Airport, which once needed protection, but now represents one of our country's true success stories. It is a giant in the Northeast region and no longer needs the protection from the free market. Actually, just the opposite. Without competition, inherently the services, the innovation, the price structure at Dulles will suffer. The curse is for millions of American taxpayers west of Mississippi who have supported the Dulles Airport 60-year stabilization, but have never benefited from their investment. We now owe it to those taxpaying business owners to give them easier and cheaper access to their representatives. Most importantly, we owe it a return of investment to our next generation, our youth. They deserve easier, cheaper, and more convenient access to real-life civic education. It's imperative that they see firsthand, whether they're in parameter or out, that our nation is depending on them to continue our march toward becoming a more perfect union. Because of the need of access and education, I ask for your support in this bipartisan amendment. I want to thank my colleague Hank Johnson for partnering with me on this. And with that, thank you, and I yield back.